everybody. Welcome to another BarMax webinar. Today's topic, the California bar exam. Some California love today. Finally, I know you guys have been asking for it. So today we're going to talk about everything California related, and specifically, obviously, with COVID-19 and the exam being postponed to September, what that means, how you can use this additional time to better prepare. For those of you who haven't seen the February 2020 California pass rates, obviously a lot to be desired there. We'll talk about how to avoid that. We're big believers that that has nothing to do with aptitude and everything to do with approach. And so we'll talk about that approach a little bit here today. And so a couple things though, housekeeping items before we get started. First and foremost, I have my amazing colleagues, Claire, Kristen, Celeste in the chat, helping out, answering questions. If you have any questions for me though, make sure you use the Q&A feature. And that way I'll see it. I'm not gonna be in the chat. It's a little bit too hectic for me. So I'm going to be focused on this presentation and the Q&As that you guys send via the Q&A feature. So definitely take advantage of that. And the other thing I did want to bring up very quickly here is that today is actually the timely filing deadline for the September 2020 California bar exam. And so if you haven't registered, definitely take a moment now and go and do that to ensure that you avoid that $50 late fee, which you see right below there. And obviously that will extend till June 15th, and then it will jump up even more to $250. So let's avoid giving money away, particularly in this economy. And so let's make sure we register. And with that, let's dive right into the subject at hand, which is none other than the California bar exam. And so what I'm going to do is go over just some basics, an overview of the exam for those of us who aren't familiar with it. And then from there, we will open it up to Q&A. I am watching the Q&A as well. So where relevant, I will try to answer when it comes up in the presentations. That way we're not wasting time with duplicate questions at the end here. And let me just make sure. All right. So California bar exam, in my opinion, has historically been the most challenging bar exam in the country. And that was definitely the case when it was a 3-day bar exam. And that's how it was when I took it. Thankfully, in 2017, that changed. And how did that change? Well, it went from 3 days to 2 days, which obviously really helpful from the fact that, you know, the 3-day California bar exam was extremely draining, right? We had, you know, Tuesday being 3 1-hour essays in the morning, 1 3-hour performance test in the afternoon, and that was duplicated on Thursday, and then Wednesday we had the MBE. Thankfully now we've gone to 1 day of writing for California, 5 1-hour essays. So instead of 6, we have 5. But the biggest change here is obviously to the performance test, going from the 2 3-hour performance tests to the 1 90-minute variety that you see here. All right, so let's chat about that. In terms of what's tested. So in terms of the California written portion of the exam, those 5 essays, these are the subjects that we can see. And so we see here with business associations is actually just a combination of corporations and then agency and partnership. And then obviously we have Civ Pro, which can be tested both in terms of the federal rules of civil procedure as well as from the California perspective. Community property, con law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, which again can be tested from the federal rules of evidence as well as the California perspective. Professional responsibility, which is the one subject that I can guarantee you will appear. So we don't engage in predictions other than predicting that with 100% certainty, you will see professional responsibility either on the essays, again, where it can be tested both from the ABA perspective as well as from the California perspective. But it's also possible that your mandatory professional responsibility actually appears on the performance test section of the exam. Then obviously real property, remedies, torts, trusts, wills, and succession. So I think this is something that's really important because you notice here, we have our MBE subjects, which I'm going to start here in red. Civil procedure, con law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, real property, torts, right? And those are the 7, right? But, you know, remedies is also, right? This is actually tested for not only contracts, right? But also for torts and real property. So while not its own MBE subject, remedies does appear. And I think it's important to note that outside of civil procedure and evidence, that these MBE subjects are tested the exact same way on the California written portion as they are on the MBE. And so that's great for us. We don't need to worry about California distinctions outside of CivPro and evidence. And so for those of you out there who are taking the California attorney's exam, where that means you're not required to take day 2, you only have to worry about day 1, I think it's important to note here that from a substantive perspective, it's identical. You're still going to need to learn the same exact materials, the difference being you don't need to worry about the multiple choice questions. And so one of the questions I see here in the Q&A is secure transactions on the California bar exam. It is not. And so you see here, actually the only part of the UCC that's really relevant in the California bar exam is Article 2, right, for sales. We do see a little bit of fixtures and real property, but nothing to be worried about. And so, okay, so that is so far the only question that we have related to that. And so let's move on now to day 2. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on day 2, which is the MBE portion. For those of you who are unaware, this is 200 multiple choice questions. And so, you know, one of the things that we should talk about now, I think, is this idea of the September bar exam and California's desire to make it an online bar exam. And I think that's going to be very easy for day 1, right? You know, using ExamSoft and some kind of technology like LSAC is using for the, you know, remotely proctored take-home LSAT, same thing for the GRE ProctorU, for example. I think this is very easy, right? Obviously, written examinees going to be problematic, but for computer takers, having the written portion be done from home on a computer using ExamSoft, which is what you're going to use in the testing center, using ProctorU to monitor, to maintain the integrity of the testing system, you know, that seems very feasible. The issue is going to come from day 2, because day 2, this multiple choice is actually the National Conference of Bar Examiners, right? And is uniform in every jurisdiction in the country except for Louisiana. And so that would require that the National Conference of Bar Examiners put this portion of the exam online as well, which I would assume is something that they're considering. And obviously having a multiple choice exam online is not challenging. You see that you're able to take our MBE questions, which are the real officially licensed questions from the National Conference of Bar Examiners online using BarMax Online, as well as on our mobile app on Android and iOS. But so the idea here, again, you know, 25 of these questions are going to be experimental, which for those of you who remember from your LSAT days. Aren't graded. And then the remaining 175 are going to be split evenly between these 7 subjects with 25 questions each. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because my colleague Celeste recently hosted a 2-hour webinar on the MBE that you can access, which I'm thrilled to report, from our office hours portal. And so if you come and log in to BarMax Online, let me go to the main screen. This is what BarMax Online looks like. You notice now on the left menu, below message boards, we have a new icon, which is a clock. And here you will find the replays of all of our office hour sessions and webinars. So you see our MBE Basics webinar, which is available there. And remember, the webinars were free content, so those are available to all of our users, whether you're free or paid. But in addition to that, now notice all of our office hour sessions that we hosted for the February 2020 exam are also now available. You see Celeste here. We see our February 2020 bar exam kickoff, which is a great overview of how to best use BarMax to prepare. We'll highlight some of that stuff today, but we see all of these amazing sessions hosted by Celeste on all of these different topics. We see our California essay roadmaps, again, extremely relevant for those of us who are taking the California bar exam, which is, I think, everyone who's here today. And so please take advantage of this new feature, which is now available in BarMax Online, and our amazing dev team is working hard to get this live in the apps as well. So if you want any information on the MBE, definitely come here. And remember, over here, oh, it's not live currently, but it should be live today, our performance test webinar that we just did as well, which is relevant to California, because something that we should talk about, when California made this change here, and remember it was in 2017, and actually July of 2017. So there haven't been a ton of 90-minute California performance tests. I think there's only been 5 or 6, right? But what we did is the multi-state performance tests have always been 90 minutes. And so we have transferred those all over. It is over 75 of them that are available to our California students. So you can get super comfortable with the 90-minute variety of a performance test. All right, so let's take a look here, see if we have any relevant questions that I can get out of the way now. So, you know, I think a lot of questions about this online, the California bar exam being online, how that's going to work. And I think you guys are definitely highlighting some of the important things that are going to be necessary to consider, right? And I think, you know, if we're going to go online, how does a performance test look online, right? How do you navigate a performance test? You notice one of the things in BarMax that we still haven't done is put the full performance test in the online version or in the app. And the reason for that is it's a performance test, right? You need to be able to navigate that. So obviously, these are things that I'm sure the California bar exam is thinking through. And I'm sure that they're going to come up with feasible solutions, right? Really, if you think about it, it's just about being able to bookmark, having the 3 separate sections and being able to bookmark and navigate. It shouldn't be complicated. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And then again, remember, you know, we're seeing it. We're seeing it with LSAC and the LSAT. We're seeing it with the GRE, you know, this idea of these take-at-home exams. And what they're using is this company called ProctorU, which uses a web camera to record you. It uses the audio of your computer to have sound. And so using that kind of big brother technology, they're able to monitor you as you take the exam. Now, obviously, they're not going to sit there with a live proctor watching the whole thing, but using technology, using artificial intelligence, they're going to be able to monitor for strange things, whether that's additional people entering whether that's strange sounds, and then obviously those will be flagged and monitored by real people. And with those systems in place, I do think it's very feasible, right? ExamSoft is what you're going to use at the testing center anyway. And, if this situation persists, if this pandemic persists, I remember taking the California bar exam in the Pasadena Convention Center with thousands of people. Obviously, that's not going to be feasible. And so I do think that makes the California bar exam moving online far more likely. And remember, they're going to have a test run with what looks like the first year law students exam this June is going to be administered online. Those questions are all created by the State Bar of California, so they don't need the National Conference of Bar Examiners help for that portion. And so that's going to be a nice test run for them. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, we will keep you guys posted. We have a course for that, so we will have students who are taking it, and we will let you know anything that we can tell you after that takes place. So let me slide these out of here. Done. So in terms of the attorney's exam that I was mentioning, yes, the idea there is in California, I think if you've been practicing in a different jurisdiction for 5 years or at least 5 years, you can opt out of the MBE portion, or you used to be able to. I think this might have recently changed, so definitely something to check with the State Bar of California. But there used to be a thing called the attorney's exam. And so all that did was, again, opt you out of the multiple choice portion. And so that meant you just had to take the 5 essays and the performance test. Okay, a question about when does BarMax's course start? Whenever you enroll. Our course is instant and lifetime access until you pass. And obviously one of the things that we have a lot of questions about that we'll discuss is, what does that mean for how to prepare, right? Most students were, considering preparing for July. Now all of a sudden it's September. What does that mean? How should I, adjust my prep? And we will talk about that. The good news is, in our world, the additional time, it just makes it even less overwhelming. And that's really the key, right? I think, taking an approach where you're not drowning yourself in black letter law, and spending your time on the things that are going to matter. And, I see this question here, what do I think about the, February 2020 California pass rate? I think it's appalling, and I think it's sadly a testament to the methodologies that our competitors are using, right? And we'll definitely talk about that in a second as we get to that. But I do think that to see a 26% pass rate where 3 out of every 4 people who are taking it are failing, I mean, that should fundamentally tell everybody something is wrong, right? And obviously we feel that, as we've shown historically, from the beginning, and obviously, something that I did want to mention that I actually forgot, the California exam is near and dear to my heart. Because for those of you who don't know, that's how the company started. Way back in January 2010, you see here, this article by MG Singler on TechCrunch announces the launch of BarMax California for iPhone. And, obviously it was in response to the market at that time, which was, dominated by one company, not innovative, really resulting in, really expensive course that, the price didn't match what you were getting. And so, I think early on, the only people that would use us were people that had gone the traditional route. People don't like to take risks with the bar exam. I totally understand that. And, given the fact that the space has been a monopoly, the likelihood that everybody who's a practicing attorney who's older used the same company, right, is very high. It was really the only game in town. But as you look at these kind of results, and it's not just California, right, it's nationwide. And then you start to, I guess, realize why a lot of these companies don't release pass rate information. Because if you are, if you take some of the other claims that 95% of students use X company, well, the pass rates that you see are effectively that company's pass rates. And obviously 26% is nothing to write home about. So quickly talking about the grading here, again, nothing super crazy here. I think the most important thing is that you have a 50-50 split, right? Between the MBE portion and the written portion. And obviously that's going to be scaled. Passing is your 1440. Give or take, it comes out to about a 65%, right? Which is a D, right? I know when I was in law school, there was a saying B's get degrees. This is even better. D's get degrees. And again, I think this is very important for us to keep in mind. You know, we always say, no pun intended, keep the bar in perspective, right? We tend to be very type A people. And I think that if you come at type A people with a standard of perfection or a standard of stacks and stacks of books, we try to achieve that to our own detriment, right? I think that's really one of the main reasons you see the 26% pass rate. So here we go. Some things that we've obviously talked about already. The July exam has been postponed to September 9th and 10th. We are working on making it, they are working on making it an at-home examination. The results are expected to come out in mid-November, around the time that they normally are anticipated, so that won't change. And notice they are giving you a ton of flexibility here, where you can withdraw up until the very end, right? But you see here that the June 2020 ceremonies have been canceled. So I see one of the questions about our pass rate, and you know, one of the things that we're actively doing right now is trying to determine our February 2020 pass rate. I guarantee you that it's going to be much higher than 26%. You know, one of the things that we've experienced as we've scaled, and there's some of the non-anonymity that comes with the App Store model and lifetime access, where we don't even necessarily know exam dates, has been the challenge of tracking pass rates. But remember, in-class courses, they don't have that issue. Right? If someone's sitting in a classroom taking your course and you know that they are taking the July 2020 exam because that's the exam that they've purchased, once that exam is over, they're not allowed to use the materials anymore. We know certain things. It's much easier for those companies to determine pass rates. We've been dealing with some issues since we've been scaling. You know, we used to release them all the time, but we do have some systems in place now that we're super excited about, that I do think will allow us to return to that transparency, because I do think it's really important. But we will talk about, you know, some of our testimonials very shortly, that I think are going to emphasize some things that we think make BarMax stand apart. And I do want to emphasize, in addition to that, you know, a lot of these testimonials are from BarMax a few years ago. And what BarMax was a few years ago is night and day from what it is today, right? One of the beauties of starting to scale and for having students realize the benefits of remote learning is that we've been able to reinvest, you know, adding some of these features that you're seeing, the office hours, right? Bringing on people like Celeste to dramatically increase our content support bandwidth, right? Look at the caliber of professors that we've been able to add: Arthur Miller, Noah Feldman, Jonathan Zitran, Grace Bloomberg, Janine Sue Gerson, right? Just to name a few, and more coming. And so, you know, I think, you know, I think that should give you confidence, right? What you're seeing with our success was from a course that didn't have the level of personal support that we are offering now. And if we were able to be successful with that level of personal support, imagine what we're going to be able to do as we take this remote learning. Because for us, as we've always said, being remote doesn't mean you're on an island by yourself. That is not the idea of remote distance learning. It's to remove the nonsense of me getting up, driving to a location to watch a video on a projector as though it was an episode of The Twilight Zone. So here we go. Moving on to the topic at hand. So as you see here, the February 2020 California bar exam results were the lowest since 1951. I mean, it was 26.8% pass rate. We see the headline here from above the law. I mean, it is obviously appalling, to say the least. But again, as I mentioned, it's not limited to California. You notice nationwide, the MBE has also dropped to an all-time low, right? And so what is that? Why do we see this? A couple of things. First, the majority of our competitors rely on made-up questions. Anybody who knows anything about standardized testing knows that it's a fundamental tenet to teach to the exam, prepare to the exam, and that requires the use of real questions. How is it possible for BarMax, the smallest of the larger bar exam providers, how can we afford the license for the real questions, but our competitors can't? And so I think that gives you a sense of what some people are prioritizing. And what we're prioritizing is putting you in a position to be successful, and that requires the use of real questions. So we only use real MBE questions. We only use real California essays. We only use real performance tests, whether that's the few California 90-minute performance tests that we have, or the real multi-state performance tests that I also mentioned. Now, in addition to fake questions, and again, like, you know, we had some ideas in practice that became, you know, we had these theories. You know, we had some theories when we were sitting down and creating BarMax about why students weren't successful. And what we felt were two things that were really problematic. One was the kitchen sink approach. Anybody who's, you know, seen any of our competitors' books, anybody who's you know, taken another course knows what I'm talking about. You sign up for their course and they send you a stack of books that is about this high, right? And if you give me 1 second, I'll compare that. So I can't see a California one around, but this is our UBE book. The California one's actually shorter, but this is it, right? Not, but let's be fair, that's a lot of content too, right? It's just not a stack like this, right? With a short outline, a long outline, an MBE outline, a state-specific outline, right? And so, you know, I think one of our tenets was what's happening with students who aren't successful is that they're being overwhelmed. Again, as we mentioned, these are type A people. You take these kind of, you know, kitchen sink approach. You need to prepare 8, 9, 10 hours a day, right? That would be crazy. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. Kristen to the rescue. And here is California, right? So you see, this is our entire California black letter law outline books, right? So, and if you go through some of these testimonials, you're going to see it. You know, I think one of the things that for us was really important when we were starting was, you know, there's this idea that students who are not successful, if you notice across the board, whether it's from the law schools, whether it's from, you know, our competitors, whether it's conventional wisdom, it's always the student. It's aptitude. It's that student's fault. And that's why when you fail, your odds of passing decrease dramatically, right? And you get stuck in this cycle, right? And so when we first came out, as you can imagine, nobody had ever heard of us. Who was BarMax? I mean, the market was so broken, though, that there was this group of students out there who had spent $4,000 for, you know, the name, hadn't been successful. And back then, these companies didn't even offer a free repeat course. So if you failed, you had to repay again right away. And obviously, students going through that experience, after experiencing it, would pause to reconsider the merits of that kind of a model. And we saw a lot of repeaters turn to BarMax early on, and students who had failed 4, 5, 6 times, right? And so, for example, here you go, Shannon Ripple. As I highlight this on the page. 4 times before she passed, but her first attempt with BarMax, she was successful. Marsha, if you notice here, had failed 5 times, before finding BarMax. But passing on her first attempt, right? And you notice a lot of the comments here. BarMax simplifies and organizes the materials in a way to make it accessible, right? Notice here, Kimberly, I think this is another one. She's a first-time taker, but an unconventional student, right? She did law school in 1996, came back, decided to take it, still successful. I think if you look at some of our success with foreign trained attorneys with no background being successful first time, you'll start to understand what I'm saying. And if we can show that BarMax works for these students who, according to conventional wisdom, have no business passing, it's gonna work for students who are supposed to pass. And again, we feel every student can pass. Again, it's not you. So if you've been through the California bar exam and you've come out the other side unsuccessful, as we always say, it's not you. And we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. We have a pass guarantee. So if you come to us, you use BarMax and you're not successful, you can forego lifetime access and get your money back and go buy another course. That's how confident we are that we will make you successful. And so please spend some time with those testimonials. But I did want to emphasize here, you know, again, we have the comprehensive course, right? And so I do want to emphasize, just to emphasize that this includes everything found in here, right? So if you're buying the California course, you don't need to buy the MBE supplements separately, right? But we do have MBE supplements available. Now remember, guys, everybody, and again, it doesn't have to be with us. It doesn't make sense to go elsewhere and buy it. It's the largest bank, best technology, best price on the market with the longest access, but you can buy questions directly from the National Conference of Bar Examiners. There are other providers that provide real questions, but do not underestimate the importance of preparing with real questions. And you see here, we offer every single question that's available, including online practice exams 1 through 4, and the new MBE study aid that was recently released. And again, if you guys want to see how that looks in the BarMax app, and for those of you who haven't downloaded BarMax, please feel free to do so. You can find it in the App Store by just searching BarMax. Comes with a ton of free content. Our MPRE course is entirely free, right? And then there's free parts of every section. And again, remember, the online version now has the office hours portal, which has a bunch of our free webinars. So great content to take advantage of. And again, just comparing, you know, the star ratings here, sometimes less is more, right? You compare that to almost full 5 stars, 4.8 with almost 2,000 reviews. I think that gives you a sense of, in a remote world, who the leader in bar exam prep really is. And so if you go here, you'll see the MBE questions. We filter them by subject. We filter them by the online practice exams. You see the MBE study aid down there. We do have analytics that track your progress, not only by subject, also by subcategory, right? So you see here broken down, where you can get a sense of how you're doing with these different types of question types. But again, we don't really recommend doing this, right? Because remember, one of the things that they're testing is your ability to spot the issue. And if you come over here and you say, hey, I'm gonna just do, you know, accomplice liability questions, well, you're giving that away, right? You're giving it away, that's accomplice liability. And so our recommendation would be to use this data to highlight strengths and weaknesses and obviously customize your prep time, but, you know, use the all category. So we do, you know, really rely and test that issue spotting, which is important. Now, I do see, you know, a question that does come up all the time is, when are these questions from? Now, remember, the NCBE, unlike the LSAT, doesn't release exams. They release banks of questions, right? The most recent bank that has been released is the MBE study aid. And that was recently released, I want to say last year, 2019. And then before that, it was online practice exam 4, right? But again, they don't tell us when these questions were actually, which bar exam they appeared on, right? And so, and again, just to emphasize, like, this is free. Subject matter jurisdiction is free. So if you come in here, you want to see BarMax, you want to get a sense of our outline, you can start playing around with it. Notice you can highlight, you can take notes, right? We do, again, send you the hard copy materials. We know a lot of students out there hate trees. So we do provide that for you if you prefer to take notes and highlight paper, pencil. It is helpful to have the outlines so that you can review questions open book, right? If you're doing MBE questions. But if you see here, you can come in here and listen to none other than Arthur Miller. But of course, anytime you try a live demo,
civil procedure
there
course.
we go. Let's back it up just a little.
Hello, my name is Arthur Miller, and for the next few hours,
and you know, one of the things I will emphasize that I think is really sets BarMax apart, because you know, everyone deals with the same thing, that there haven't been a ton of real MBE Civ Pro questions released, right? It's the newest subject that's been added. None of the online practice exams have Civ Pro questions. I think at this point, there's only been like 46 released questions, which obviously makes it challenging. But a couple of things. One, the way Arthur Miller clarifies and makes it what, in my opinion, is one of the driest and most mundane subjects, not only for the bar exam, but also during law school, understandable and digestible, I think really puts you in a position to be really successful. But remember, if you ever want to see additional fact patterns, right, for civil procedure, the essays are a great place to start. And while you obviously have the California essays, our students can reach out to us. We do have the multi-state essay exams, which again, have no relevance outside of giving you examples of how federal civil procedure questions can be tested, right? And so definitely feel free to take advantage of that. And then with that, I think, why don't we, oh, and then obviously we also have the private tutoring, which very similar to this experience, right? Done remotely using web conference. So they are stay at home, quarantine compliant. And if you are finding yourself struggling, whether it's with, you know, substantive material, whether it's with writing essays or performance tests, we can help you. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out if you find yourself struggling. All right, and with that said, I think it's a good place to dive into some Q&A. Let's do it. Give me a second though. Okay, good time to drink some water. And I see Peter's question about the California essay roadmaps, which that is in reference to these office hour sessions that I did before the California bar exam back in February. And we are in the process of uploading these roadmaps into BarMax. And so they will be available for you where you don't need to go through them the way that you're forced to now, which is watching these videos. And so stay tuned. That is coming. I hope you guys are seeing that we've started to roll out the updates to the flashcards. That will continue, and we hope to have all of the new flashcards live, if not before the end of this month, very early in June. All right, so first question, with the exam postponed, how should I best utilize the study schedule? Great question, and I think this one will answer a lot of the Q&As that we've received. And so, you know, I think what's important right now is you still want to take the same approach, right? And the way we always say is the bar exam is testing 3 things. And so everything we do should be related to one of those 3 things. And so what are those 3 things that the bar exam tests? Let's keep it visual. We got a blank piece of paper here. Ian knew that I wanted to write some stuff for you guys. So, the bar exam is testing three things, right? The first thing is obviously knowledge of black letter law, right? The substantive, elements of a crime, valid contract, negligence, whatever the case may be, right? The second thing that they are testing is your ability to IRAC. Everybody's favorite mundane, I'm writing to a sixth grader issue, rule, application, conclusion, right? Now, you're right. There are far more intelligent ways to write an essay. This is very mundane, methodical. But let's keep in mind what's happening after you write this essay. We're not presenting this brief in front of the Supreme Court, right? It's being sent to a person who's paid a couple dollars to read your response, and not only your response, stacks and stacks of them, right? And so what does that tell you? They're most likely going to be skimming. And the beauty of IRAC is that it allows you to make what that grader is looking at easy to digest in a skimming situation, right? So compare that, right? The analogy I love to use is, imagine I wrote the perfect response, right? But that perfect response was one long paragraph, no line breaks. So just a block of text. And I definitely hit everything, right? I hit the issue right over there. I hit the rule right there, application, and then my conclusions, right? I'm putting myself in a position to not get full credit, right? Where you compare that to something where every single issue, right, has a header. And then my first paragraph is my rule. Second paragraph is my application. Third paragraph is my conclusion. Much easier for that grader to follow. And this is really basic stuff, and something that I love to give as an example. I apologize, I am a 90s baby. Really been enjoying The Last Dance, by the way. If you need something to watch and you're a fan of sports, check out that Jordan documentary. But also related to the 90s, Dumb and Dumber. And so we have these blog posts that you can find where we take scenes from movies and we pretend they're bar exam fact patterns, right? The purpose of these being to emphasize the importance of formatting, right? And so here's the clip, right, where they put the atomic peppers in his burger and the guy ends up dying. If you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert. And you notice here we talk about what happens in intentional tort, right? And so you see how we break it up. Nice, neatly organized, easy to follow, right? And I don't know who's saying don't see this movie. I mean, obviously, this is classic movie, right? California is beautiful this time of year. But in addition to this one, we have a couple other ones that you can check out. Homicide, where we do 7. If you haven't seen 7, spoiler alert, like I won't even scroll on this one. This will definitely ruin the movie for you. And then we have a few other ones where BarMax bar clips, I think, would be the easiest way to find them. We did People versus Larry Flint. Yep, defamation. For those of you who are not aware, an amazing case argued in front of the Supreme Court protecting our First Amendment. Obviously, when you protect the First Amendment, sometimes you will protect things that you might not necessarily agree with. But these are great examples of IRAC, right? And so definitely check these out. They are available on our blog. Again, super easy. Just Google BarMax bar clips. They will come up. Because again, I think IRAC is very easy. You don't even need a bar exam course to understand IRAC, right? You learned it in law school, right? We just want to get back to that, mundane, basic. I am writing to a sixth grader, right? And then the last thing, which is so easy, you would think, but sadly not, is just following instructions, right? Because if you think about it, particularly for the performance tests, right? I mean, it's a closed universe. I mean, there's nothing for you to do other than what they're telling you to do, right? But obviously, in addition to that, making sure that you answer the call of the question. And an example that I love to use, right, when we talk about the importance of pausing and not rushing, right? I took the July 2010 California bar exam. Let's pull it up here. I want to take a look at something. Here we go. And you see this first question. I started to answer it as though it was a crimes question, right? It's not. It's a tort action, right? Under what theory or theories, if any, might patron bring an action for damages against homeowner, burglar, or cinema, right? And so obviously the importance of answering the question, following directions, right? And again, that was me. I made that mistake. Thankfully, I was outlining, so I hadn't started writing. But this is one of the things that we talk about, the importance of pausing for a second, trying to get an outline down, your outline being your issue headers just to guide you, right? And so with this in mind, I think everything that we're doing between now and September, or if you're taking February, if you're taking July of 2021, it doesn't matter, right? A lot of times students buy BarMax well in advance of their target exam date. I mean, it's instant access. You get access to all the updates free of charge. If you know you're going to take the exam, why not, right? But obviously your approach is different from when you're starting sooner, right? But really, that comes down to one thing and one thing only, and that's from the perspective of, actually, you know what, we're going to use a different color here to highlight why this is different, and that's memorization. And the reason this is different is this is the one thing that you don't want to do now, right? Because if you start memorizing now, by the time the exam rolls around, you're gonna forgot. And so I think what you want to be doing right now is refreshing, but refreshing in a way that helps you start this process subconsciously, right? And what is that? How can you do that? What is the secret? Very simple. Active learning with real questions. So a lot of times what you see with our competitors is because of this 8, 9, 10 hours of prep a day, right? That's their schedules. These are their schedules, right? And then let me give you an example of how nonsense that is. Not from don't take my word for it. Let's take a look over here. I want to find a testimonial that always resonated with me because I think it emphasized what we're talking about. Let's see, Eric, here we go. So if you look at Eric, he graduated law school a long time ago and decided that he wanted to take the bar exam in 2018. But notice, he was working 50 plus hours a week with 2 toddlers. I have a 2.5-year-old, just one. So I can only imagine what 2 is like. In 50 hours a week, I dream about that. But, right, the idea being this man had a lot going on. Look at how that story ends. Scored a 316 on the UBE, right? Clearly, he wasn't preparing 8, 9, 10 hours a day, right? He didn't sign up well in advance. I want to say Eric signed up in the fall there, so maybe it was October. And so how is that possible, right? And so I think, again, this is the key. And so what happens, again, I think, when you're drowning in black letter laws, that's all you do. You sit there staring at outlines, re-listening to lectures, right? Yeah, UBE is Uniform Bar Exam. It's not California, it's different. It's just an example. Because very similar though in terms of the approach. And so I think what you want to do is, instead of just focusing on things in a vacuum, because in a vacuum, it's not tangible. Any subject, right? And like, I can say that for challenging subjects like evidence, and I can say that for really, really straightforward subjects like community property. I remember the first time I went through the community property materials, I remember thinking to myself, wow, right? Where do I even start, right? But then by looking at some sample community property essays, I said, oh, okay. They all seem to start the same way. They define community property, and lo and behold, community property is negatively defined. So then they start talking about separate property, right? And then you start to realize how they go through the different parts of community property, right? Origin, actions, right? And then evidence is another great example, right? I remember one of the things I thought, okay, great, we just went over all of these objections, but how do I organize an essay? And looking at the model answers allows you to understand that. And so our advice is to do everything in the context of what we are preparing for, which is the bar exam. And so that means doing questions open book, grabbing the California outline book, opening multiple choice in the app. Where is it? Here we go. I'm going to go, or even better yet, let's say I'm going to go and do a crimes essay today, right? And I'm going to open this crimes essay. I'm going to open my crimes outline, and I'm going to work on this open book, right? This process instills the material in you in a way that just reading black letter law outlines, listening to audio lectures simply cannot do. Now, don't get me wrong, we want to rely on the outlines, we want to rely on the audio lectures for clarification, right? If you have time, saw Eric was doing the commute, listening to the audio lectures. I realize with stay-at-home orders, a lot of people might not have that, but if you're going for walks, if you're cooking dinner, you're doing dishes, cleaning the house, whatever the case may be, if you have downtime, use that to get through lectures, listen to audio lectures, pass it. But use your prep time where you're sitting down and saying, this is my study time for the bar exam, to be active, right? And absolutely do everything open book, outline the essay, write the essay, right? Review it open book. Same idea with the multiple choice, right? I'm gonna go here to BarMax. If I'm doing it by subject, great, right? What I would actually recommend, because I don't want to know whether I got it right or wrong, I'm going to go from make sure that I'm in test mode where I don't see the answer, right? Or, you can do it in study mode too, the difference just being don't select it, right? So here I'm looking at question 17. I'm going to figure out the answer to this question. Again, with my Civ Pro outline open, working through it, trying to understand it, not only understand why the correct answer is correct, also understand why the incorrect answer choices don't work, right? And then obviously reviewing the correct answer choice explanations. You see, compare that to taking it in study mode. Let's say I answer this question, okay? Then sitting here, reading the explanation, telling yourself you knew it, moving on. Very passive. You're not processing anything there, right? And so that is the approach that we would recommend taking between now and September. Obviously, as the September exam gets closer, we're going to turn our attention to memorization, right? And obviously, how you memorize is really subjective, right? If you memorize using flashcards, we have the flashcards, obviously, that you can take advantage of. As I mentioned, we are in the process of updating them. We just rolled out the contracts, con law, I want to say evidence. I think torts is coming next. All the California subjects are getting a redo as well. If that's how you memorize, definitely take advantage of it. If you memorize by rereading outlines, take advantage of it. If you memorize by creating shorter outlines, do that, right? Whatever you do to memorize, do it, but don't do it now. Wait until August, right? If you start to memorize now, you're gonna forget. And instead of that, take an active approach. That active approach, you won't realize it, is actually helping you retain this information far better than you ever dreamed, right? All right. So hopefully that was helpful. So here's a question about logistics. It says the deadline for immediate repeaters has been extended until July without penalty. Is that correct? Let's see. I don't see anything about repeater on this page. Oh, it says exam opens for repeaters May 8th. Yes, it's correct. The timely filing deadline for repeaters is July 8th, 2020. So that's correct. What I said earlier today, let's pull that up just so you guys can see what I'm looking at here. So here, the timely filing deadline again for first time takers, right, is today. Again, afterward, you can still do it. You're just going to end up spending $50 more. But you see immediate repeaters actually, so not even for first time. So everybody other than February 2020, today is the timely filing. But for immediate repeaters, you have until July 8th. All right, moving along. Yeah, so we just talked about the repeater date being different. That's correct. I did not pass the February exam. How long before I receive my results? So I'm talking about, I think you're talking about when they mail it to you. I'm not sure. That's something you probably want to check with the California bar exam. But if you were a repeater, right, if you did fail, even if you're a BarMax student, for sure, if you're a first-time BarMax student, you should do this as well. I think it's a great idea to send us your February essays. You know, you get them, you can scan them, you can upload them, you can email them to us. We can take a look at those and get a sense of where we went wrong, and start to use that to start to adjust, right? Because again, remember, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So for those of you who have been unsuccessful, right, with the big name companies, right, I promise you that your experience with them cannot compare to what BarMax will offer. Remember, for us, when you're not successful, it matters because it's your success that makes us successful. It's the word of mouth, it's the testimonials that allow students to have faith in us. We don't have the brand, right? And I promise you, again, that doesn't mean that we don't have BarMax students who fail, but you won't feel that it was because BarMax didn't do everything in its power to put you in a position. And more importantly, if we're not able to put you on the pass list the first time, we stand behind our product. You can continue to use it without any additional charge, or you can take advantage of our pass guarantee and request a refund. So we talked a little bit about how it will be done online. Again, so yes, and part of doing it online will be getting the NCBE to have the MBE portion online. Now, another possibility that we might want to mention, although I think this is far less likely in California, Massachusetts has announced that they're going to make their own bar exam, right? And here's that story. I think blog.com always cuts it off. No, it's available. Great. And so you see, like, they're not even going to worry about the NCBE bringing the MBE portion online, right? I think California is hopeful that that will happen. I think there's other jurisdictions that are also hopeful, right? We see obviously New York in that situation doesn't seem to be improving. Broadway is going to be closed through September. If Broadway's closed, how are you going to take a bar exam? So, but again, stay tuned. You know, the beauty of, you know, when you look at the glass half full perspective is we're dealing with a pandemic in a time that we have the technology to work around it, right? We have the technology to let you take a bar exam from home and administer that securely, you know, making sure that the integrity of that testing system is maintained. And so that is the good news. And obviously, you know, being with BarMax, a technology startup, you know, we are in a position, we already offer the questions online. If there's anything that we can do to, you know, better simulate that experience, we're already looking at the performance tests and how that might function online. Obviously waiting to see if we can see anything from the state bar directly before implementing it, but we will make updates to our system to put you in a position to replicate exam conditions as closely as possible whenever we can. And we did it for the LSAT. A lot of people who, you know, obviously, why would you be thinking about the LSAT? But, you know, LSAC announced LSAC Flex, which is this remotely proctored 3-section online LSAT. You know, for those of you who know, the LSAT's normally 5-section. They announced it on a Tuesday. By Thursday of the same week, we had released that functionality for our students to give you a sense of how quickly we operate here at TestMax. And yes, Victoria, all of our webinars are available for replay. I do want to highlight this one more time because we are so excited that the feature is finally live. It is only available on BarMax Online, but if you go to your free account or your paid account and you tap on the clock icon from the left menu below the message boards, you see office hours, and all of our webinars are available. And then obviously the office hours are also available for replay. You don't have access to office hours unless you are a paid BarMax student, but the webinars, including this one, are available for free, and this will be uploaded here as well, so stay tuned. All right, moving along. So we talked a little bit about my thoughts on the very low success, right? Again, we're big believers that it has nothing to do with student aptitude and everything to do with methodology. So if you were one of those unfortunate people who found themselves on the wrong side of the pass list, you know, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You know, we see it all the time. Again, you know, don't take my word for it. We've been around for long enough now where you can come here, go to our testimonials, and see directly from repeaters how their experience with BarMax differed from their experience with their other company. And then in addition to the written testimonials, we do have a lot of video testimonials that you can check out as well, where you can actually see them talk about their experience, not only with other companies, but also with us. And, you know, this is a little bit outdated because, just for the record, we were also named the #1 bar review course for 2019, which made it 3 straight years in honor of The Last Dance, 3-peat. Can we go for 4? We're trying hard. Hopefully we can do it. But obviously your success is what makes us successful, and we will continue to work tirelessly to put you guys in a position to be successful. All right, so in terms of guideline and structure for taking it home, again, so we don't know it's at home yet, right? They're working on a plan, right, to get it online, you know. Now, I think we're going to know a lot more as soon as we have the first-year law students exam take place, which, if we go over here, I don't know if they've released anything, but from my understanding, their plan is that this exam will be online this fall. I mean, I'm sorry, this June. And they're using this as a kind of test run for the September bar exam. Again, if the September bar exam is actually online. We don't know that for sure. So please stay tuned. Obviously, as soon as we get information, we'll send it out via email. If it's something super urgent, we will send it out via text. Obviously, if we need to have any additional sessions like this to explain things, walk you through things, absolutely. We will do that. So just stay tuned. In the meantime, what we want to focus on are the things that we control, right? The same thing we told all of our students when they canceled the March LSAT, when they canceled the April LSAT. The only thing that we can control is our prep. Everything else is out of our control. We're going to do our best with the cards that we've been dealt. The one thing that we control is our performance, right? And again, for those of you watching Last Dance, right, try to take some of that competitiveness of Michael Jordan, right, and put that towards your bar exam prep and get this out of the way so we can go on, become practicing attorneys and save the world, right? Lord knows we need it. All right, moving on. In terms of do we do live sessions? Absolutely. So these kind of office hours now are part of our course, right? And so, obviously, we've been doing these webinars, but now we're going to start to do our office hours, which will, track our calendars. We understand that there's 3 exams now. We will do office hours for all 3. And, the people who are taking it at the end of September are going to be in the best position because they're going to have all of the office hours from July and September available as replays in addition to the ones we will host for them. And yeah, Kobe Bryant, another great example, right? Mamba mentality, right? Forget about basketball, right? Just a great way to kind of go at life, do your best. So Evelyn, I see that you have a content question. I really appreciate that, but not the time for that. But for those of you who are BarMax students, just to emphasize the best way to take advantage of our support, right? For MBE specific questions, right? Remember, every single question has its own message board, right? Where if there's something about the explanation that is giving you trouble, you can come on here, not only read the previous threads, but obviously you can post yourself as well. But please note that we don't respond to redundant questions. So please take the time to read previous threads before posting yours, right? This is a shared resource that comes with the course at no additional charge, but obviously part of that is we give students equal access. This is not private tutoring, but it is available as a resource. And in addition to that, if you have general questions, like Evelyn's question here is, what is proper notice in a periodic tendency? Well, first of all, a couple of things we can emphasize about how we can quickly find the answer to that question using the BarMax outline. Periodic tendency is not going to be in ownership. It's going to be in landlord tenant, right? I can jump in here and let's search for periodic. And we have found it. Proper notice would be at least 1 period in advance. Look at that. Content question answered. The beauty of search. But in addition to that, let's say you couldn't find it or you were struggling to find it, you can always come here from the left menu and tap on support and ask your content questions here as well. Again, same idea, right? Shared resource available to everybody. So, please, spend the time, try to find answers on your own using the content that we have created. But if you can't, this is available. And obviously, if you feel like this is not providing the level of personal support that you need, you can always supplement your prep with private tutoring. In terms of beginning the registration process to take the California bar exam, I think the thing you want to do is just come to their website and register for the exam. And that's where I would start that process. We can make a note to share this link in the replay. I don't know if I can do it now. Let's see. Let's see if this works. It would be great. No. We'll share it in the replay. And obviously you saw how I got there, right? Just go to the California Bar Exam website, and then you see register for exam online. And remember, if you can register today, right? Unless you took the February 2020 exam and failed, if you register today, you save $50. Yeah, and again, always a good idea to register sooner rather than later, because if it is in a location, spots do fill up, and next thing you know, you might have to go really far away, right? I had to take mine in Pasadena, which wasn't terrible being, in West Los Angeles. But I did hear stories of people having to go much farther. So definitely register sooner rather than later, so you don't need to make a road trip out of it. We talked about immediate repeaters. Your registration deadline is July 8th for timely. It's not really appearing here, and maybe it's over here. I lost that page. Let's go back. Nope, that's not it. I'll find it. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. If California decides to make their own multiple choice questions, what if? Well, again, it's hard to engage in hypotheticals. Obviously, if that does happen, always remember that everybody's in the same boat, right? So if they decide to do that and they don't release any examples, everybody is in the same boat and the exams are curved, right? Now, again, I don't anticipate that being the case. Never forget the beauty of capitalism. Do you think the National Conference of Bar Examiners wants to lose the revenue that they generate from administering the MBE portion? Based on that, I would assume that we're going to see innovation take place that transitions this exam online. Now, remember, we're already starting to see this before coronavirus, right? Remember, the MPRE has already started to transition from this paper, pencil, Scantron to an online exam, right? And obviously, I would have, if you had asked me before coronavirus appeared, what do I think is going to happen to the MBE long term, I would have said, I would say it's going to transition to an online exam. Now, online exam that you would take in a testing center, not one that you take at home, because I'm not psychic. I did not predict this pandemic. But, I do think that that's natural. And I think, I would say the same thing about the LSAT, right? I think you saw the LSAT transition to the tablet LSAT, right? We didn't think it would go to a tablet exam, but we thought it would go to a digital exam. It just makes too much sense in today's world. So I know everyone keeps asking about updated schedules. We are, I think, creating calendars again with the new September exam date in mind. But remember, all that's going to do is move stuff, right? Which is not really what you want to do. The better approach is to get started, use the calendar as a guide. Our calendar is not rocket science, guys. It's literally an order of subjects, right? Starting with the MBE, because the MBE subjects tend to be longer, right? More substantive. But we start with the MBE subjects and then move to the state-specific subjects. That's really all you want to do. Again, going back to our discussion of what we should be spending our time doing, right? If you can do this and pick an order of subjects, that's all you want to do, right? Don't make it bigger than it is. That being said, if you are a BarMax student, even if you're not a BarMax student, you want to talk more about specific study plan, you can do that by just reaching out to us and scheduling a call. All right. So we talked about that. So remember, the clock section is not in the app right now. It's only in the online version. The update to the app will be live shortly, but if you want to access the replays of these webinars and office hours, what you want to do is go to BarMax Online and log into your account there, right? And if you don't know how to do that, I should show that here. You would just go to sign in. and you would enroll. And notice, for those of you who had used Facebook login is gone, just reset your password, and you'd be able to log in with the same email, just no longer using Facebook. We were so upset about how Facebook was manipulated to challenge our democracy that we have removed it as a sign-in option from BarMax. Or at least that's my story. All right, continuing on. Yeah, so it looks like that is true. You can really withdraw from the California bar exam right before the exam. And obviously the reason they're doing that is, listen, there's a ton of uncertainty that is surrounding. But yeah, if you look here, that is definitely the case. But again, I wouldn't be worried about it. I wouldn't be afraid of it. If it's online from home, again, the technology is there. Obviously, for those of you who are hoping to handwrite it, I do think that that will be problematic if it is online from home. So you might want to start practicing typing a little bit. But yes, you can actually withdraw right before. So when you talk about, do I think that the bar increased its expectations, I'm assuming you're talking about how we can explain this. And no, I don't think that this has anything to do with increased expectation, because remember, this magic number still applies, and that's the passing score, right? Now, obviously, parts of the exam are, they're scaled, right, and they're curved. But yeah, I don't think that that's how you can explain this. All right, continuing on. Yeah, again, I think this is a great point when someone's talking about the pass rate. Again, I don't think that the pass rate is because the graders aren't doing their job, right? Yeah, it's 1440 plus. Remember, the ideal score on the California bar exam, just to remember, right? Keep it in mind. And again, I know it's hard for us as type A people, right? But we are not trying to be perfectionists when it comes to the California bar exam. Keep it simple, right? Stay above the forest. Do not get lost in the details of the trees. And you'll notice, right? One of the beauties of taking this approach, right, is that by living with real questions, you see what's tested. And you notice that it's the major testing areas that matter. Torts, negligence, intentional torts, defamation, products liability, contracts, valid contracts, right? Defenses to contracts, right? Crimes, murder, accomplice, conspiracy, Fourth Amendment, right? You start to see what's tested, and you start to see that the exceptions to exceptions, for example, let's see another exception to exception. Going back to my favorite bar exam, the only one that I ever took in terms of live as a student. But this evidence question drove people crazy, myself included. And by the time I got to 4 and 5 here, I had no idea what I was talking about. But it didn't matter, because the vast majority of this question's points are weighted 1, 2, 3, right? And so again, I think this beauty of keeping your prep in context is it allows you to feel like this is something that's doable. And I just want to make something clear to everybody so you don't think it's you. This applies to myself. If I was planning to get anywhere near perfect on an exam like the California exam with the subject breadth that it requires, it would be impossible. Okay? So remember that. That is not what's happening here. to 65%. Okay, moving on. But again, so that being said, while I don't think that the reason you see 26% is that people aren't grading, I do think the importance of formatting can't be understated to ensure that you're making life as easy as humanly possible for that grader. All right, here's a great question from Temunjin. How come BarMax MBE questions only have explanation for the correct answer? Why not? Incorrect. Well, not true. Now, not all of the BarMax questions have incorrect answer choice explanations, but just to emphasize that in the online practice exams, all 4 have explanations for every question. And we have now started to upload the incorrect answer choice explanations for all of them. So our hope is in the next month or so, every question will have a forward-facing explanation. But the reason we have avoided that is the same reason if you go and search the archives of the internet, you can find some really old BarMax reviews that complain about us not providing any explanations, right? Why? Again, going back to this idea of pre-written explanations, in our opinion, become a crutch that is to your detriment. Now, we've obviously caved because we don't like to hear complaints every day. And so we are putting these live. We put the correct answer choice explanations live, and we're putting the incorrect answer choices live now. But that doesn't mean that you should go back to the type of approach that won't allow you to be successful. Do not rely on the explanations as a crutch. Do not take questions, read the explanations, tell yourself you knew that, and move on. I promise you, you will never see that question again. The purpose of these questions is to take something away from these questions that we can apply to future questions, and struggling with those questions in the context of Black letter law is the best way for you to do that. And so, there's my, speech to inspire you to go above and beyond. But that being said, we have caved, and those explanations will all be live for you very shortly. And again, remember, the reason we did it for the online practice exams is when you're way past the beginning of your prep. You are taking simulated exams to get a sense of where you are. In that world, fine, right? Because, we're not using it to prepare. Whereas at the beginning of the course, and we're going through these subjects, right? Particularly like in the full course, right? When we give you these little handfuls of questions, we really try to avoid having the explanations here. But again, we have caved per the request of our students, so stay tuned. So again, in terms of our pass rate for February 2020, we haven't been able to finalize it yet. We are in the process of doing that. As I mentioned, we have put some systems in place that will hopefully make it easier for us to report our pass rates. Again, the issues that we have, some of the anonymity that surrounds the App Store, in addition to lifetime access, not knowing when people are taking certain exams, has made it challenging for us as we've gone from a very small company to a larger company. But we have some things in place, and so stay tuned. I have no doubt that it's going to be much higher than 26%. I'm not even sure how that happens, but hopefully more students start using BarMax, and that pass rate will start to increase. So if the attorney's exam is still an option, are you better off taking it? For us, we feel absolutely, right? It takes out the multiple choice portion. Why would you take that? Now, the argument that people try to make is I'm really strong in multiple choice. Yeah, you can't be that much stronger in multiple choice than you would be writing an essay on the same subjects, right? So, and you have to write the essays anyway. So for us, if you're eligible for the attorney's exam, please take that. And you are eligible for a discount with us because you're not going to be using the MBE questions. What's on my shirt? No, it's Tupac Shakur in honor of California love. But he does work out. All right. Are the majority of BarMax questions the same as another company? Um, so I mean, listen, I mean, I think these are matters of preference. I mean, I'll tell you this, and I wouldn't really look to me for this. Um, if you look at our testimonials, because I haven't had the luxury of using other companies, right? But if you look at our testimonials and you see what they say about our explanations, I've never heard a student say another company's explanations are better than ours. That being said, we do hear the complaint about the incorrect answer choices not having explanations. But that's different from somebody's existing explanations being better than our existing explanations. And again, as I mentioned, we already have a ton of incorrect answer choice explanations live. And remember, while you might not see an incorrect answer choice appear here, right? But here's an example, right? This one has all of the answer choices have explanations, right? But don't forget, in addition to that, you have the message boards, right? Where, that's a recent question. But if we go back a little bit to not so recent, you're going to see tons of additional discussions, right, taking place where you can take advantage of this as well. Now, this takes more effort than reading, pre-written explanations, but again, we think that's to your benefit. So can I break down the fees? Sure. I mean, in terms of, I'm assuming we're talking about the fees to take the California bar exam, because the BarMax fees are really easy. Let me pull that up real quick. BarMax California is $1,899. And then our MBE supplements, again, BarMax California is comprehensive. So if you buy BarMax California, you do not need to buy the MBE supplements, but we do offer those if you're just looking for help for MBE. We have the course, which is at $999.99. That's the outlines, audio lectures, flashcards, and the questions, comes with content support. And then we just have the question bank, which again is the largest, most affordable question bank on the market, and also comes with lifetime access, not a window of access. But that does not come with content support. You can read the message boards, but you won't be able to ask questions or attend office hours as an MBE only, questions only student. So if you're saying that you bought the MBE course and you don't have access to flashcards, you definitely do. If you're not sure where to find them, just reach out to support and we can guide you. And then in terms of the fees to take the bar exam, let's find out dates and deadlines. fees. Yeah, you should be able to find them here somewhere. I know we have some stuff on our website too. Let's see if actually we can look there. But this might be a little bit outdated. But yeah, you should be able to find that stuff online. All right, so continuing on. Sylvia, it's great to hear. It's great to hear. So Sylvia says, I began studying with you guys and taking MBEs and my scores increased. I'm telling you, you can't underestimate the benefit of relying on real questions. It's not just bar exam, right? Any standardized test, but for some reason, bar exam is the one that people ignore it. Oh yeah, so as you see here, it seems like 851 is the new price to register for the California bar exam. One of the reasons I knew that the California bar exam wasn't going to go away, right? Again, the beauty of we're living in a capitalist society is we can't lose revenue, right? We got to figure out ways to charge more and make sure students can still take it. So Michael, this session is not archived yet just because we don't have that kind of technology. But as soon as this is processed and uploaded, it will be available not only in our new office hours portal, which again, just to highlight for you guys, is available on BarMax Online, but also on our YouTube channel. And we do share the replay links via email, so stay tuned to that. So I don't believe that the California attorney's examinee is available for foreign trained attorneys practicing for 5 years or more. I think it has to be a United States attorney. But again, question for the state bar. What makes your private tutors experts? Well, it's really just comes from their experience with bar exams, right? They've all passed multiple bar exams. They've all been tutoring, teaching bar exams for a while. Some of them were actually former graders, not only for some of our competitors, but also for actual state bar exams. And so, I think just like what makes anybody an expert in any field, it's, exposure to the materials on a consistent basis, and obviously having a track record of success, right? That we can point to say, hey, our methodologies work, particularly when competitors' methodologies, names you might recognize more than you recognize BarMax, haven't worked, right? So that's another thing to just keep in mind, right? The beauty of where BarMax is today is that you don't need to just buy our course, right? We have the courses, but we have MBE supplements now, we have private tutoring now, and we can help you be successful regardless of what that looks like in terms of which of our resources you're taking advantage of, right? And just remember, the last thing anybody wants to do is take this exam again, right? It is preventing you from earning a livelihood. You spent, close to $200,000 of money for law school, right? At least 3 years of your life. And you don't want this exam to prevent you from taking advantage of that new career path that you have spent so much time and money and energy trying to unlock. And so please don't hesitate to reach out. So in terms of Michael's question here, been using BarMax MBE and your scores have improved and you're getting about 73%, which is remarkable. Great job there, but you haven't seen the same results with essays. Well, I think if you're struggling with essays, there's a couple of things. First, let's make sure, as we talked about, formatting is not an issue, right? And again, you can see this formatting in the model answers, right? Again, you don't want to rely on perfect model answers either. That's not doing anything for you other than making you feel inadequate. Instead, let's look at what an actual student was able to accomplish on the day of the bar exam. So when you look at the California model answers, the beauty of these is they're littered with mistakes. But not only did they pass, they were selected as model answers. This should give us all the confidence in the world that we can do this, right? But obviously a great place to look when you're looking for formatting guidance as well, right? And obviously we talked about BarMax, bar clips, IRAC. You don't need our graders, you don't need our private tutors to understand IRAC and implement IRAC. What I think you might find helpful if you're struggling beyond the formatting is, once you have the formatting in place, sit down, write some exams under time pressure, and submit it to our graders. And let's start to understand what's working, what's not working, well before you walk into the exam, right? What is the benefit of personalized writing revisions? The benefit of it is that before you show up on the exam, you know where you stand, right? And so let's get ahead of that. So, a lot of students, they put off submitting essays. Don't put it off. The beauty of the essays is getting the feedback now so we can incorporate it early on in the course so that while we go through and do these practice questions, we're doing better, right? Now, another thing that I think I want to emphasize here is, particularly in California, right? Every essay is an hour, right? You know, an hour essay, you want to sit down, you want to write practice essays. I mean, doing 5 of them, imagine what that looks like, right? And so a really nice time hack that you can use, especially if you're comfortable with IRAC, is instead of wasting your time writing the essays, just outline them. And by outline them, I mean, read it and then do your issue headers. So let's pretend like I spot the issue of negligence. I'm going to write a header there. You know, negligence is definitely one where I'm probably going to do subheaders, right? So I'm going to say, okay, duty, breach, right, causation, and then damages, right? And I put it down here because I know what these are going to look like on the exam, right? I'm going to have IRAC underneath each of these, right? But I don't need to necessarily do that for every essay, right? And so this is a great way to kind of, you know, expose yourself to a lot of practice essays without necessarily, you know, spending the time to write them all, which can be mundane. In terms of, you know, how many total essays we offer, I want to say we go back, and I can confirm this for sure right now. So we go back to 2002. And so you got to think every exam up until July 2017 had 6 essays. After that, it's 5. So hundreds of previous essays and model answers to boot. All right, let's see where we are. Making good progress. Making good progress. Although I lost the Q&A. 1 second. Oh, got it back. All right. Yes, we will continue to host office hour sessions. Again, you know, these are more because of the stay-at-home orders, really trying to inspire you guys to take full advantage of this time. But as you see from the February exam, these sessions were all for February 2020 kickoff, MBE strategies, intro to essays, performance tests, PT and essay writing, contracts and remedies, torts, con law, evidence, real property, California Essay Roadmaps 1, California Essay Roadmaps 2, California Essay Roadmaps 3. And we are planning to do the same thing for all 3 July bar exams. So the normal July exam, for the early September exam, which is California now, and then for the late September exam as well. And yes, you will have replays to all the videos, but remember, only if they're relevant to the course that you've purchased. So something that I want to emphasize here is, if you've only purchased our MBE course, you're not going to get access to the writing office hours. You'll get access to all the MBE office hours, right? But you won't get the access to the office hours that aren't related to your course. Obviously, if you're a California student, you're getting access to all of the sessions because they're all relevant. It's a comprehensive course that you purchased. Great question here. Does BarMax take into account the needs of foreign educated applicants? Absolutely. And so something that I want to pull up here is, does BarMax work for foreign trained attorneys? And if you ever had this question yourself, that's really all you want to do, right? Does BarMax work for foreign trained attorneys? And you will find this article that just highlights a lot of our foreign trained testimonials. And I think what's really important about this, and you'll see it for both New York and California, you'll see it from students who were unsuccessful using competitors. You'll see it from students who had no LLM. And so their entire exposure to California was BarMax. And here's a great example. And so absolutely. And again, you know, we have a specific BarMax California LLM program, which is $2,199. It has just a little bit more personal support, right, in terms of some private tutoring. But for example, you know, Helena here, this was before that program existed. So this was just our normal BarMax course where you see this success. And so absolutely. And again, one of the things that we talk about is not just with repeaters, it's the foreign trained attorneys as well. Again, our goal early on was find students who, according to conventional wisdom, shouldn't pass. Because we felt that if we can prove that our methodology works for them, it's going to work for students who are supposed to pass, right? All right. So given current travel restrictions, you know, is a great question from foreign trained attorneys. You know, I think given the fact that you can request a refund up until the day before the September California bar exam, I think I would feel comfortable registering for it, even as a foreign, what did I do here? Even as a foreign attorney, because obviously, yeah, you know, with the travel restrictions, it's still possible that you won't be able to attend, but as long as we can get a refund, what's the harm? And so I would still recommend registering even as a foreign trained attorney with travel requirements. So here's you know, people always talk about this, and you know, let me see if I can find it, because I do think it's a good comparison to show as you consider, if you're just looking for an MBE question supplement, who to rely on. So let me pull up this comparison chart. And so here's a great comparison of the difference between BarMax and our competitor. And this is actually old, right? As you see here, it says we have 974 ratings, 4.7 stars, whereas actually, if you look at where we are almost at 2,000 with 4.8, 1717. So, you know, I think this is a great comparison here as you consider. I think, you know, to summarize, better technology, more affordable, longer access, better content. That's how I would summarize that discussion. So Monica, I'm a foreign attorney, haven't seen the results. Please reach out to us. As you can see, we have had tremendous success with foreign trained attorneys. So let's definitely schedule a time, touch base. For those of you who aren't necessarily sure if you're using BarMax the best way, obviously we're talking about it in this presentation, but one of the best sessions to check out is this one from the last bar exam, the February 2020 bar exam kickoff that I did. This is me explaining how to best use BarMax to be successful. And we, you know, one of the things we became aware of was, you know, given the anonymity that exists, we had students purchasing BarMax, you know, not reaching out to us, not really engaging with the emails that we're sending, and not really doing best practices. And so this is why we've started to release this content, because we really want to make sure that we're using these materials in a way that puts you in a position to be successful, right? Because we realize that, you know, the likelihood of you going off of the path is very high given the breadth of content. And so that's really some of the reasons that why we've been so adamant with these office hour sessions and these webinars, really making sure that we're guiding you in terms of best practices so that we're using BarMax to put us in a position to be successful. In terms of will we review your questions? Absolutely. And yes, Christina, do we have California testimonials? Absolutely. So what I would suggest is if you come to our website and you go to testimonials, Leslie is California, Sheila is California, Nikki is California, Fuad was California, Roxana was California, Natalie's California, Dan's California, Nick's California. And then over here, I think that, you know, the easiest way is if you do a, control find and just search for California. Like here's Sheila, she took it 4 times. Notice 4 times using everybody you could imagine. And then magic occurred. Well, not magic, right? Again, I think there's a method to this madness. There's a reason we're able to churn this story around. And again, I think it comes back to our methodology. And so, yes, if you want to see testimonials, just go on our website. And the best way, if you're looking for a specific testimonial, just control find California, control find tutoring. Now, something to remember though, and something that again makes us very proud, because we don't want you to feel like you have to buy tutoring to be successful. We just released private tutoring for the February 2020 bar exam. That was the first bar exam that we offered private tutoring. So think about that. We've been around since January 2010. So I don't want you to feel it's the private tutoring that's making these students successful. It's the methodologies, it's the foundation. Now, obviously, private tutoring can be extremely beneficial for some students. And we don't want you to feel like you have to go elsewhere to get that, but don't feel like you need private tutoring to be successful. Again, all of these testimonials are from a world without private tutoring, because we just started to get our February 2020 testimonials, and I don't even think they've been uploaded yet. So I hope that gives you confidence in BarMax as a course, standing alone from the private tutoring. In terms of, a follow-up question, how to best utilize tutoring, I think tutoring is best used when you're struggling substantively, like you're struggling to understand black letter law. You want someone to help, clarify that confusion. I think that's a really good use of private tutoring. I think using private tutoring to address, problems with writing. Like, for example, if you've taken the February 2020 California bar exam and you failed and you have your essays and you want to go over that with somebody, I think that's a great use of scheduling an hour of private tutoring to sit down with a tutor and go over those, right? And obviously, if you're struggling with performance tests, private tutoring can be extremely beneficial with that, because I think with performance tests, it's really just about getting comfortable with the task and accomplishing that task. And sometimes watching somebody work through that can be extremely beneficial, but stay tuned. We have some exciting content in the pipeline that we're planning to make available to you guys outside of private tutoring as well. But that's how I would use private tutoring. I think it's really helpful when you need additional personal support to get you over the hump, whether it's substantively, or whether it's strategically with writing, or even strategically with multiple choice. I do see that a lot where students want to work through MBE questions together so they can understand the strategies. You definitely see that. And so that's how we would recommend using it. In terms of what is the MBE Study Aid, it's just the newest banks of questions that were released. It's 210 questions, 30 for each of the 7, 30 for each of the 7 subjects. You see here, so for example, here's the 30 CIP Pro questions. So just new questions. Talked about calendar. Does audio lecture work on the app too? Absolutely. And remember, one of the beauties of the app is you can download all of the lectures in advance and use them without an internet connection. So if you're on an airplane, which obviously is not happening right now, if you're on the subway, which probably is not happening right now, but if it was, you could use BarMax without internet or draining your data, which is a really, really nice feature. So definitely take advantage of that. Oh yeah, David, that's a good point. So you're saying that the essay workshop and the performance test workshops are not downloadable. Yeah, we can definitely do that. I will make a note of that and put that on to-do list. That's not a problem at all. Yeah, I don't see why not. Then you can take advantage of those without internet as well. I don't believe you can download it from here, can you? Let's see. Yeah, no, you can't. I'll definitely bring that to Dev's attention. So yes, in terms of how lifetime access works with BarMax, you get update to all updates free of charge. And so the most recent change to the California bar exam was professional responsibility. And so what you'll see here is red text. And that red text are the recent changes. And we highlight it in red so it's easy for you to see how that's changed. And then over time, obviously, we'll remove that. But yes, you do get access to all updates free of charge. So do I think the standard of passing is going to change given the COVID-19? No, I don't, right? I don't think you're going to see anything change here. Same thing with the LSAT, right? I don't think that the LSAT, taking it at home now, obviously is a shorter exam in that world, but outside of that, it's the same exam. And I don't think that they're going to scale it differently because you're taking it at home. In terms of this question, remember, I see a lot of people asking, should you supplement, using us or one of our competitors. Again, I do think this is a great comparison chart. And remember, if you bought a BarMax course, you absolutely don't need to buy any additional question banks because our course gives you access to every release question, right? And so definitely keep that in mind. If you just want help with MBE questions and you're considering BarMax versus other MBE question supplements out there, I think, there really is no comparison. And again, and as a foreign trained attorney, I think my question would be, what are you planning to use for the rest of it? Because I think, writing can really be challenging. And then breadth of subject can also be challenging for foreign trained attorneys, right? I think that kitchen sink approach, when you don't have any exposure, is even more difficult. So when you say you purchased the full course, but your interface looks different, just remember I'm in the app, which this is different from what it looks like online, which is here. This is what it looks like online versus the app. But generally, it's the exact same thing. You notice filter in the top right allows me to navigate. I have the left menu, right, which opens up these options, right? You compare that to the online version. You see the word filter in the top right-hand corner, gives you the same ability to navigate. And then obviously you see the left menu as well. And for those of you wondering, how do you submit essays? You go over here to essay grading, right? And that's how you submit it. Now remember, I'm doing both of these on my iPad. That's not what we would recommend though for BarMax Online. BarMax Online is for your computer. If you're on an iPad, use the iPad version, right? I'm just doing it so I don't have to go from my computer to my iPad and keep switching screens, I'm just using the same device. So this is just me logging in on Safari. But again, you should do that from your computer, not from the iPad, because we have an app. All right, so almost 2 o'clock here, guys. So getting close to the end here. Let's see. So in terms of lifetime access, remember, when you purchase a BarMax course, it comes with 10 writing revisions. Those are available until you use them. Once you use them, you can add on additional ones at any time. For our students, they're $30 each, or bundles of 10 for $200. Again, every student is different. I do think that the model answers are really helpful. So you shouldn't need a ton of writing revisions to get a sense of where you are and what you need to adjust. But obviously, every student is different, and we do want to provide that support, so it is available. And yeah, again, we're big app people too. That's where the company started, right? We're mobile first. Again, going back to that story way back when. And actually, let me pull up my second favorite story from way back when, which was, let's see. Because as I mentioned, when we first came out, it was not only $4,000, but if you failed, you had to pay that again. No free repeat course. And this article we really enjoy because it talks about how some of those policies changed right away, which is the beauty of competition, right? And free market. But we'll save that discussion for another time. All right, so here's a good question. Do I consider studying under test mode more important than study mode? No, as I mentioned right at the beginning, I actually think study mode is more important, right? We're not just going through questions to get through questions, right? We really want to spend the time to review those questions, to understand Black letter law, to take things away from these questions, which again will hopefully be a better understanding of Black letter law, hopefully a better understanding of how the examiners try to trick you, trap you, right? The importance of process of elimination, right? But I think, I wouldn't use test mode outside of down here when I'm taking my online practice exams. Outside of that, I think study mode is what I would be doing. And so in terms of our explanations, yes, they're drafted by BarMax content creators, as well as the National Conference of Bar Examiners though, right? When the National Conference of Bar Examiners provides explanations like they do for the online practice exams, those are the explanations that we use, right? And so I think that's pretty much it for now. And so again, I see a lot of questions about how to best prepare, right? About the MBE, about the essays. And again, I just want to emphasize, I apologize that we can't get through all this stuff, today, but we have done a lot of sessions on this. And so again, if you have a free BarMax account, all you need to do now is log in from your computer, and you now have access to the office hours portal. Take advantage of our MBE basics webinar, right? We talk a lot about how to best use our question bank, how to rely on explanations, how to use study mode, how to use test mode, how to actively prepare. Same idea in the essay workshops, right? MBE essays, MEE essays. Now remember, while MEE essays is a uniform bar exam component, the general strategies though that we're talking about apply to all bar exams, right? IRAC applies to all bar exams, whether California, whether uniform bar exam, whether a state-specific exam like Indiana, right? It applies across the board. And so please take advantage of all of this free content here. We do have a performance test workshop that we just completed that will be appearing here as well. And that performance test workshop obviously definitely applies to California. So take advantage of that. Thank you guys so much for coming out to these webinars. I'm so thrilled you guys are finding them so helpful. We really appreciate all your guys' support and putting your faith and trust in our program. We really wouldn't be here without you. And we're really excited to see this next generation of BarMax students continue to pave the way and change this market once and for all. And so with that said, thanks again for coming out, and I will see you guys soon.